The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers at exactly 11:47 p.m., clattering against the concrete driveway like a gunshot in the quiet neighborhood. I was underneath my battered pickup truck, trying to fix another leak in the transmission, when I heard voices drifting through the open kitchen window above. "Dad just doesn't get it, Mom. You deserve better than this boring life." My 16-year-old daughter, Judy's voice, carried that particular tone of teenage certainty that made my jaw clench. I stayed perfectly still under the truck, listening. "Your father is a good man, Judy." That was my wife, Jade, but her voice lacked conviction. "He provides for us." "Provides what? This falling apart house? That embarrassing truck? Mom, Kellan makes you smile again. I see how you light up when he texts you." The wrench felt cold in my palm. Kellan Brooks. The name had been floating around our conversations for 3 months now. Jade's new friend from the gym. The exciting one who rode motorcycles and told stories about his military service overseas. "Kellan understands what it means to really live," Jade said, and I could hear her moving around the kitchen, probably making her nightly chamomile tea. "Your father thinks excitement means fixing appliances on weekends." I closed my eyes, feeling the rough concrete against my back. 21 years of marriage. 21 years of being called reliable, dependable, safe. The boring husband who kept the lights on and the mortgage paid while working double shifts at Morrison Manufacturing. "You should leave him," Judy said matter-of-factly. "Trade up. Kellan has that new Mustang, and he actually takes you places." "It's complicated, sweetheart." "No, it's not. Dad's too safe for excitement. Everyone at school thinks so, too." The kitchen window slammed shut, cutting off their conversation. I lay there for another 10 minutes, staring at the rusted undercarriage of my truck, letting their words sink in like motor oil into concrete. Too safe for excitement. I crawled out from under the truck and wiped my hands on an old rag. The house looked different somehow, like I was seeing it through their eyes. The peeling paint on the shutters, the crooked mailbox I kept meaning to fix, the small, cluttered life of Asher Trevan, mechanical engineer and professional disappointment. Inside, the house was quiet. Jade had gone to bed without saying goodnight, something that had become routine over the past few months, her late nights at work, her mysterious phone calls, her sudden interest in yoga classes that seemed to happen at odd hours. I poured myself a glass of water and noticed Jade's purse sitting on the kitchen counter. She usually took it upstairs. My engineering mind kicked in automatically, noting the anomaly, filing it away for later analysis. The next morning brought the usual routine. Jade left early for her job as a museum curator, claiming she had inventory to complete. Judy grabbed a granola bar and headed to school without acknowledging my existence. I drove to the factory in my embarrassing truck, listening to talk radio and wondering when my life had become a cliché. Morrison Manufacturing sprawled across 12 acres of industrial wasteland on the outskirts of town. I'd worked there for 15 years, designing safety systems for automotive assembly lines. Not glamorous work, but it paid well and kept people from getting hurt on the job. "Morning, Ash." My supervisor Pete waved from across the parking lot. "How's the home front?" "Same as always," I replied, which had become my standard response to everything. The factory floor hummed with activity. Conveyor belts carried partially assembled engines past workstations where technicians installed components with practiced precision. I made my rounds, checking safety protocols, updating maintenance schedules, solving the small problems that kept everything running smoothly. Around 10 o'clock, I was calibrating a sensor array when I spotted a familiar figure near the visitor entrance. Kellan Brooks stood talking to our security guard, wearing expensive jeans and a leather jacket that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, confident, with a kind of easy smile that made people trust him instantly. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and he moved with the fluid grace of someone who had never doubted his place in the world. "Can I help you?" I approached the security desk, keeping my voice neutral. Kellan turned, and his smile widened. "Asher Trevan, right? I'm Kellan Brooks. I think you know my friend Jade." Friend. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. "What brings you to Morrison?" I asked. "Consulting work. Your company's interested in upgrading some security systems." He gestured vaguely at the factory floor. "I specialize in industrial protection protocols." That was news to me, but then again, I wasn't involved in security decisions above my pay grade. "Jade talks about you all the time," Kellan continued. "Says you're the guy who keeps this place running." Someone has to. Must be rewarding work. Steady, predictable. The way he said it made those qualities sound like character flaws. I studied his face, looking for tells. In my line of work, you learn to spot potential failures before they happen. Stress fractures, worn bearings, systems operating outside their design parameters. Kellan Brooks felt like a system heading for catastrophic failure. "Well, I should let you get back to it," he said, checking an expensive watch. "Maybe we'll run into each other around town." After he left, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just been evaluated and found wanting. The security guard mentioned that Kellan had been asking detailed questions about employee schedules and facility access. Consulting work, apparently. That evening, I arrived home to find Jade in an unusually good mood. She was cooking dinner, something she hadn't done in weeks, and humming while she worked. "How was your day?" she asked without turning around. "Interesting. Had a visitor at the plant. Kellan Brooks?" Her shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. "Oh? What did he want?" "Security consulting, apparently. Funny thing, though, nobody mentioned hiring outside consultants." Jade turned to face me, her expression carefully neutral. "Maybe it's preliminary. You know how these corporate things work." I didn't, actually, but I nodded anyway. Dinner passed in relative peace. Judy even participated in conversation, mostly about her upcoming school dance and whether we could afford a new dress. Normal family stuff that felt almost foreign after weeks of cold silence. Later, after Jade had gone upstairs to take a bath, I noticed her purse again, still sitting on the kitchen counter. Still unusual. I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperation makes people do things they never thought they would. I opened her purse and found her phone. Not the iPhone she usually carried, but a cheap prepaid device I'd never seen before. The text messages told the whole story. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. A is working late again. The motel on Route 9 has weekly rates. Very discreet. You're right, he's completely clueless. This is easier than I thought." And then, from yesterday, "Judy's on board. She thinks you should leave him too." I scrolled through weeks of messages, each one a small betrayal that added up to something devastating. Plans for weekend getaways, intimate details about our marriage that Jade had shared with her lover, complaints about my boring personality, my lack of ambition, my embarrassing truck. The final message was from this afternoon. "Saw your husband today. You're right about him being pathetic. This will be fun." I put the phone back exactly where I found it and walked outside. The night air felt thin, like I couldn't quite catch my breath. 21 years of marriage, and I'd been reduced to a punchline in someone else's love story. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Regret usually starts here." I stared at the message, confused. Wrong number, probably. I deleted it and went inside. But as I lay awake that night, listening to Jade's steady breathing beside me, those words kept echoing in my mind. Regret usually starts here. Maybe it was time to find out what came next. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of carefully maintained normalcy. I went to work, came home, fixed things around the house, and pretended I didn't know my wife was planning to leave me for a man who thought I was pathetic. But I was learning things. Useful things. Like the fact that Kellan's security consulting business was mostly fictional. A few phone calls to industry contacts revealed no record of Morrison Manufacturing hiring outside consultants. Whatever Kellan was doing at the factory, it wasn't legitimate work. I also learned that my daughter had been posting videos on social media about her loser dad and how her mom deserved someone exciting. The comments from her friends were particularly brutal. Apparently, my reputation as the neighborhood bore was well established among the teenage demographic. Most importantly, I learned that my wife had been building a case for divorce that painted me as emotionally distant and controlling. She'd been documenting every argument, every moment of frustration, every time I'd raised my voice or questioned her new schedule. The lawyer she'd consulted was named Marlowe Trasker, and according to his website, he specialized in protecting women from difficult marriages. His strategy seemed to involve portraying husbands as either abusive or incompetent, then maximizing the financial settlement. I was apparently going to be the incompetent type. On a Thursday evening in late October, everything came to a head at the Morrison Manufacturing Annual Company Party. The event was held at the Riverside Community Center, a cavernous space decorated with orange and black streamers that made everything look like a Halloween nightmare. I'd been looking forward to the party because Jade had agreed to come with me. For one night, I thought. We could pretend to be a normal married couple. Maybe even remember why we'd fallen in love in the first place. I should have known better. Jade arrived separately, claiming she'd been held up at work. She wore a black dress I'd never seen before, something that hugged her curves and made her look 10 years younger. Several of my coworkers noticed, and I felt a brief moment of pride before reality set in. She wasn't dressed up for me. "Asher!" Pete's voice boomed across the room. "Come meet our new security consultant." My stomach dropped as I turned to see Kellan Brooks standing near the bar, looking perfectly at ease in a room full of blue-collar workers and their families. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than most people here made in a month. "We've met," I said, approaching the group. "Right, at the plant." Kellan's smile was warm and genuine, the kind that made people want to trust him. "I've been looking forward to working with your team." "What exactly will you be consulting on?" I asked. "Industrial espionage prevention, mostly. You'd be surprised how much valuable information walks out of places like this every day." The irony wasn't lost on me. A man who was stealing my wife was lecturing about theft prevention. "Sounds fascinating," I said. "What's your background in manufacturing security?" "Military intelligence, mostly. Iraq, Afghanistan. You learn to spot threats in hostile environments." Several people nodded appreciatively. Military service carried weight in a town like ours, where most families had someone who'd served overseas. "Which unit?" I asked. "That's classified," Kellan replied smoothly. "But I can say we dealt with some very sophisticated enemies." I was about to press for details when I felt a hand on my arm. Jade had appeared beside me, her face flushed with what looked like excitement. "Kellan, I didn't know you'd be here tonight." "Surprise." He leaned down and kissed her cheek, a gesture that lingered just long enough to be inappropriate. "You look incredible." I watched my wife's face transform. The tired, distant expression she'd worn for months melted away, replaced by something bright and alive. She was glowing in a way I hadn't seen since our early dating years. "Jade's been telling me about her work at the museum," Kellan said, turning back to the group. "Art authentication is fascinating stuff." "Is it?" Pete asked politely. "Oh yes. The ability to distinguish genuine pieces from forgeries requires real expertise. Jade's credentials are impressive." My wife beamed under the attention. "It's not that complicated once you know what to look for." "Modesty," Kellan said with a laugh. "She's being modest. The authentication process involves chemical analysis, provenance research, stylistic evaluation. It's like detective work." I found myself studying Kellan's face as he spoke. Something about his enthusiasm seemed forced, like he was performing rather than conversing, but everyone else was eating it up. "Well, I should mingle," Jade said after a few more minutes. "Asher, why don't you show Kellan around? Introduce him to some of the other engineers." She drifted away toward a group of wives near the buffet table, leaving me alone with the man who was planning to steal my life. "Your wife's amazing," Kellan said, watching her go. "You're a lucky man." "I know." "Do you, though?" He turned to face me directly. "Because from where I stand, it looks like you take her for granted." The conversation around us continued, but I felt like Kellan and I were suddenly in a bubble of hostile silence. "Excuse me?" "Jade deserves excitement, Asher. Adventure. She's wasting away in this little town, married to a man who thinks romance means fixing the garbage disposal." Heat rose in my chest. "You don't know anything about my marriage. I know she's unhappy, I know she feels trapped, and I know she's ready for something better." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. This man was discussing my wife like she was a business acquisition, something to be evaluated and purchased. "Better meaning you?" "Better meaning someone who appreciates what he has before it's gone." I wanted to hit him. The urge was so strong I could feel my hands forming fists. But we were surrounded by my coworkers and their families, and losing control would only prove Jade's point about my character. Instead, I smiled. "Well, good luck with that." Kellan's confident expression flickered for just a moment. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just good luck." I walked away, leaving him standing by the bar with a confused look on his face. The rest of the party passed in a haze of forced conversations and fake smiles. I watched Jade laugh at Kellan's stories, saw my coworkers' wives shooting me sympathetic glances, felt the weight of my own humiliation settling around my shoulders like a lead blanket. Around 9 o'clock, I found myself in the parking lot, getting some air and trying to process what had just happened. My marriage was over. Not officially, not yet, but the writing was on the wall in letters 10 feet tall. "Dad?" I turned to see Judy approaching from the community center entrance. She looked uncomfortable, like she wanted to be anywhere else. "Having fun?" I asked. "Not really." She kicked at a loose piece of gravel. "Mom sent me to find you." "What does she want?" "She's leaving with Kellan. Says you can drive yourself home." The words hit like a physical blow. My wife was abandoning me at my own company party in front of everyone I worked with to go home with her lover. "Did she say when she'll be back?" Judy shrugged. "She didn't say she was coming back." I stared at my daughter, looking for some sign of sympathy or regret. Instead, I saw the same expression I'd been getting from her for months, a mixture of pity and embarrassment, like I was a problem she couldn't wait to outgrow. "You think I deserve this," I said. "I think Mom deserves to be happy. And I don't make her happy. Do you?" The question was delivered with teenage bluntness. "When's the last time you took her somewhere nice? When's the last time you surprised her with anything besides a new appliance?" I couldn't answer because she was right. I'd spent 21 years being reliable and responsible, thinking that was enough, thinking that steady love was better than passionate chaos. "Kellan makes her feel alive again," Judy continued. "Maybe if you'd tried harder, she wouldn't have needed to look somewhere else." My 16-year-old daughter was lecturing me about marriage, about effort and romance and keeping a woman satisfied. The humiliation was complete. "I'll see you at home," I said, walking toward my embarrassing truck. "Dad?" Judy called after me. I turned back, hoping for something, an apology, a moment of connection, some sign that I hadn't completely failed as a father. "Mom left her phone in your truck yesterday. She asked me to get it back." She held out the cheap prepaid device I'd discovered weeks ago, the one filled with intimate messages between my wife and her lover. "She knows I found it," I said. "Yeah, she knows." The drive home took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. I kept thinking about Kellan's words at the party, about appreciation and taking things for granted, about regret. My phone buzzed with another text from that unknown number. This is how regret usually starts. This time, I didn't delete it. I spent the weekend alone. Jade didn't come home Friday night, and Judy stayed at her friend's house, claiming she needed space to think. By Sunday evening, the silence in my own home had become unbearable. That's when I made my first real decision as a single man. Monday morning, I drove to the First National Bank and opened a new checking account. Then I transferred half of our joint savings, my half, into the new account. It wasn't revenge, exactly, just preparation for what was coming. Tuesday, I called my lawyer. Ron Jeremy had handled the legal work when we bought our house 15 years ago. He was a small-town attorney with a reputation for being thorough and ruthless when necessary. His office smelled like coffee and old paper, and his handshake felt like a vice. "Divorce?" he asked after I'd explained the situation. "Seems likely." "Any evidence of adultery?" I showed him printouts of the text messages from Jade's secret phone. Ron read through them with the detached interest of someone who'd seen it all before. "This helps," he said, "but you need to be careful. If she's building a case against you, any aggressive moves could backfire." "What kind of aggressive moves?" "Hiding assets, confronting the boyfriend, anything that makes you look controlling or vindictive." "So I just wait for her to destroy me?" Ron leaned back in his chair. "You play defense until she makes her move. Then you respond proportionally." "Proportionally to what?" "To whatever she tries to take from you." That afternoon, I returned to work with a new perspective. Morrison Manufacturing looked different now. Not like a stagnant job with no future, but like something worth protecting. I'd invested 15 years in this place, built relationships, earned respect. Whatever happened with Jade, I wasn't going to let her destroy my professional life, too. Around 3 o'clock, I was reviewing safety reports when Pete appeared at my workstation. "Got a minute?" he asked. We walked to his office, a glass-walled space overlooking the factory floor. Pete closed the door and gestured for me to sit. "What's going on with you and this Kellan Brooks character?" he asked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, he's been asking a lot of questions about you specifically. Your work schedule, your access levels, your responsibilities, claims it's part of his security assessment." That was interesting. "What kind of questions?" "Whether you work alone, whether you have access to design files, whether you take work home." Pete frowned. "Thing is, we never actually hired him for a security assessment." My stomach tightened. "What?" "I checked with corporate this morning. No record of any consulting contract with Brooks or his company. Far as I can tell, he talked his way in here under false pretenses." "Why would he do that?" "That's what I'm hoping you can tell me." I thought about Jade's work at the museum, her authentication credentials, her access to valuable artwork and historical artifacts. Then I thought about Kellan's questions about my job, my schedule, my access to proprietary information. "I think he might be running some kind of scam," I said. "Using you?" "Using my wife. And through her, maybe trying to get access to things he shouldn't have." Pete nodded grimly. "I'm going to have security escort him out if he shows up again. And I want you to be extra careful about any work materials. Don't take anything home. Don't discuss projects outside the office." "Understood." That evening, I drove past the motel on Route 9. Kellan's Mustang was parked outside room 12, along with a car I recognized as belonging to my wife. I didn't stop, didn't confront them, didn't even slow down. I just noted the information and kept driving. But I did make a phone call. Riverside Museum, this is Patricia. Hi, this is Asher Trevan. I'm Jade Marin's husband. I think she might have left some work files at home by mistake, and I wanted to make sure she wasn't missing anything important. Oh, hello, Mr. Trevan. Actually, Jade's been out sick for the past week. Flu, she said. Is she feeling better? Jade hadn't been sick. She'd been going to work every day, or at least leaving the house at her usual time. Much better, thanks. So she hasn't been in at all? Not since last Monday. We've been managing fine, but we miss her expertise, especially with the new authentication project. Authentication project? The insurance company wants us to verify the provenance of several pieces in our permanent collection. It's routine, but it requires Jade's credentials and access codes. I thanked Patricia and hung up, my mind racing. Jade had been lying about going to work. She'd been spending her days with Kellan instead, possibly giving him access to museum systems and authentication protocols. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Trevan? This is Agent Sarah Mitchell with the State Department. I need to speak with you about your wife. The world tilted sideways. What about her? Can you meet me tomorrow morning? It's urgent. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown. I spent the rest of the evening staring at the ceiling, wondering what fresh nightmare was about to unfold. Agent Mitchell turned out to be a serious woman in her 40s with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She ordered black coffee and got straight to business. Your wife has been flagged in connection with a federal investigation, she said. We believe she may be involved, knowingly or unknowingly, in the theft and sale of classified materials. What kind of materials? Defense blueprints, industrial designs, technical specifications for military equipment. She slid a folder across the table. This is Kellan Brooks. What do you know about him? The file contained photos, background information, and a criminal history that made my head spin. Kellan Brooks wasn't his real name. He'd been born Kevin Brock in Detroit, had served briefly in the Army before being discharged for theft, and had been arrested multiple times for fraud and forgery. He's been targeting women with access to valuable information or materials, Agent Mitchell continued. Museum curators, corporate executives, government employees. He seduces them, gains their trust, then uses their credentials to steal whatever he can sell. And you think he's using my wife. We know he is. We've been monitoring his communications for 6 months. Your wife has provided him with authentication codes, security protocols, and access to museum systems. I felt sick. Is she going to be arrested? That depends on how cooperative she's willing to be. Agent Mitchell explained that Kellan was part of a larger network that sold stolen information to foreign buyers. The FBI had been building a case for over a year, and they were ready to move, but they needed inside information to catch the entire organization. We want to offer your wife a deal, she said. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity. What kind of cooperation? She continues her relationship with Brooks while wearing a wire. She helps us document his activities and identify his contacts. The irony was staggering. My wife's affair had led her into federal crimes, and now the government wanted her to keep sleeping with her lover to build their case. What if she refuses? Then she goes to prison for conspiracy to commit espionage? I drove home in a daze, trying to process everything I'd learned. My boring, predictable life had somehow intersected with international crime. My wife wasn't just cheating, she was a federal suspect. At the locker room, when I walked into the house, I found Jade sitting at the kitchen table, still wearing the clothes she'd had on 2 days ago. She looked exhausted and scared. We need to talk, she said. Yes, we do. Kellan's in trouble, real trouble, and he says it's my fault. I sat down across from her. What kind of trouble? The FBI came to the motel this morning. They arrested him. Tears started flowing down her cheeks. They said I'm going to prison too. Are you? She looked up at me with desperate eyes. I don't know. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I just wanted to feel alive again. By helping him steal classified information? I didn't know that's what he was doing. He said he was a consultant. He said the museum work was just research for his clients. I studied my wife's face, looking for signs of deception. After 21 years, I could usually tell when she was lying. But this felt different. She seemed genuinely terrified and confused. What exactly did you give him? Access codes for the authentication database, copies of provenance documents, information about security protocols. She wiped her nose with a tissue. He said it was all routine consulting work. Jade, Those systems contain information about every piece in the museum's collection, including pieces on loan from private collectors and other institutions. I know that now. My phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number. Regret usually starts here. This time I showed it to Jade. I've been getting these messages, I said. Any idea who's sending them? She stared at the screen, her face going pale. That's Kellan's number. What? That's his number, but he's in jail. We looked at each other across the kitchen table, both realizing that whatever game Kellan had been playing was more complicated than either of us had understood, and it wasn't over. The next morning brought chaos. I woke up to find 2 black SUVs parked outside my house and federal agents knocking on my door. Agent Mitchell was there, along with 3 other people who introduced themselves with badges and serious expressions. We need to relocate you immediately, Mitchell said. Both of you. Why? Jade asked. She'd barely slept, and her eyes were red from crying. Because Kellan Brooks escaped federal custody last night, and we have reason to believe you're both in danger. The words hit like a physical blow. How does someone escape federal custody? He had help, professional help. Mitchell's jaw was tight with anger. We're dealing with a more sophisticated organization than we initially realized. Within an hour, we were packed into one of the SUVs and driving north toward the mountains. Judy had been collected from school and was sitting beside her mother, looking confused and frightened. Nobody had explained anything to her yet. Where are we going? I asked. Safe house in Montana. Remote location, secure communications, federal protection. Mitchell was riding in the front passenger seat, constantly checking her phone. You'll be there until we can neutralize the threat. What threat, exactly? She turned to face us. We intercepted communications suggesting that Brooks's organization has put a contract on your family. They believe you know more about their operations than you actually do. How much more? Enough to destroy their entire network. The drive took 18 hours, with stops only for gas and food. We crossed state lines under federal escort, staying in convoy formation with armed agents in multiple vehicles. It felt surreal, like something from a movie rather than my actual life. The safe house turned out to be a cabin in the wilderness, surrounded by pine trees and accessible only by a single dirt road. Solar panels on the roof provided electricity, and a satellite dish handled communications. It was comfortable but isolated, exactly the kind of place you'd hide someone who needed to disappear. How long do we have to stay here? Judy asked. She'd been sullen and resentful since learning about her mother's situation. As long as it takes, Mitchell replied. Could be weeks. Could be months. That first night, I lay awake listening to the sounds of the forest and trying to understand how my life had gone from boring to terrifying in the span of a week. My wife was a federal witness. My family was under protection from international criminals. My boring, predictable existence had been replaced by something from a thriller novel. Jade couldn't sleep either. She sat by the window, staring out at the darkness. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for all of this. Which part? All of it. The affair, the lies, getting us involved with criminals. She turned to look at me. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. But you meant to leave me. Yes. At least she was being honest. Why? I asked. What was so terrible about our marriage that you were willing to risk everything? She was quiet for a long time. Do you remember when we first met? You used to surprise me. Take me places I'd never been, show me things I'd never seen. You made me feel like the world was bigger than I'd imagined. And then? Then we got married and bought a house and had Judy, and everything became routine, safe, predictable. She sighed. I know that sounds selfish. It does. But I felt like I was disappearing, like I was becoming invisible in my own life. I understood what she meant, even though it hurt to hear. We'd fallen into patterns over the years, taking each other for granted, assuming that love was enough to sustain a marriage without effort or attention. So you found Kellan. He made me feel seen again, important, like I mattered. You mattered to me? Did I? When's the last time you really looked at me, Asher? When's the last time we had a conversation about something other than bills or schedules or household maintenance? I couldn't answer because she was right. We'd been roommates for years, not lovers. The next few days fell into a strange routine. Federal agents rotated shifts, monitoring communications and maintaining security. Jade spent hours being debriefed about her relationship with Kellan and her knowledge of his activities. Judy attended online school sessions and complained constantly about the lack of cell phone service. I found myself with nothing to do but think. On the 4th day, Agent Mitchell received a call that changed everything. "We found Brooks," she announced after hanging up. "He's holed up in a warehouse outside Detroit with at least 6 associates. Local FBI is preparing to move." "So we can go home?" Judy asked hopefully. "Not yet. We still need to identify the rest of his network and recover the stolen materials." That evening, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my own home number. "Hello?" "Hello, Asher." The voice was calm, professional, unfamiliar. "My name is Felix Roard. I work with Kellan Brooks." Mitchell, who'd been monitoring the call, started making urgent hand gestures to keep him talking. "What do you want?" "I want to make a deal. Your wife has information we need, and we have something you want." "Which is?" "Your normal life back. Your daughter's safety, your wife's freedom." I looked at Mitchell, who was frantically typing on her laptop. "What kind of information?" "Authentication codes for certain high-value items, provenance documents, access protocols for museum databases." Felix's voice remained eerily calm. "Your wife provided some of this information to Kellan, but not all of it." "She gave you everything she had." "No, she didn't. She held back the most valuable pieces, insurance perhaps, or leverage." I looked at Jade, who was shaking her head frantically. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "Then let me clarify. Your wife has access codes for the Metropolitan Museum's authentication database. She also has provenance documents for several pieces currently on loan to smaller institutions. These items are worth millions of dollars to the right buyers." "She doesn't work for the Metropolitan." "No, but she has colleagues who do. Colleagues who trust her enough to share access credentials for collaborative projects." Mitchell was writing furiously on a notepad. "Keep him talking. We're tracing the call." "What do you want me to do about it?" "Convince your wife to cooperate. Provide the remaining information. In exchange, we'll disappear and leave your family alone." "And if she refuses?" Felix's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then we'll find you, all of you, and we'll take what we want anyway." Mitchell immediately got on her radio, coordinating with other agents. Within minutes, the cabin was buzzing with activity. "We need to move you again," she said. "That call was traced to a location less than 50 miles from here." "How did they find us?" "We're working on that." As we packed our belongings for the second time in a week, I realized that my transformation from boring husband to federal witness had only been the beginning. Whatever came next was going to be worse. My phone buzzed with a text. This is how regret usually starts. But this time, the message was followed by a photo. It showed the exterior of the cabin where we'd been hiding, taken from the tree line less than an hour ago. They weren't just close. They were already here. The attack came at 3 a.m. I woke up to the sound of breaking glass and Agent Mitchell shouting orders into her radio. Emergency lights flooded the cabin as federal agents took defensive positions around the perimeter. "Stay down," Mitchell yelled, pushing us toward the back bedroom. "We've got multiple hostiles approaching from the north." Through the window, I could see muzzle flashes in the tree line. The safe house that was supposed to protect us had become a trap. "There's a service tunnel under the kitchen floor," Mitchell said, pulling up a concealed hatch. "It leads to an emergency exit about 200 yards into the forest. What about you?" "We'll hold them here as long as possible. Give you time to reach the extraction point." Jade and Judy dropped through the hatch first. I was about to follow when Mitchell grabbed my arm. "Your wife never told us everything," she said urgently. "Whatever information she's hiding, it's worth enough to risk a federal assault. People don't attack government safe houses unless the payoff is enormous." "She gave you everything she had." "No, she didn't, and if we don't recover it, more people are going to get hurt." I dropped into the tunnel and found my family crawling through darkness toward an uncertain exit. The space was barely wide enough for an adult, and the air smelled like dirt and fear. Behind us, the sound of gunfire grew more intense. We emerged from the tunnel into a small clearing where another federal agent was waiting with a vehicle. Within minutes, we were driving through mountain roads in the pre-dawn darkness, heading toward another temporary refuge. "Where are we going now?" Judy asked. She'd been remarkably calm throughout the ordeal, but I could see the strain in her face. "Airport," the agent replied. "You're being relocated to a federal facility in Nevada." "For how long?" "Until this is over." But I was beginning to suspect it would never be over. Not as long as Jade was hiding something that people were willing to attack federal agents to obtain. During the flight to Nevada, I sat beside my wife and asked the question that had been bothering me since Felix's phone call. "What aren't you telling them?" "What do you mean?" "The authentication codes, the Metropolitan Museum access, the high-value pieces Felix mentioned." I kept my voice low so Judy couldn't hear. "What did you give Kellan that you haven't told the FBI about?" Jade stared out the airplane window for a long time before answering. "There's a private collector in Switzerland," she said finally. "Someone who's been trying to acquire certain pieces for years, pieces that aren't supposed to be for sale." "What kind of pieces?" "Art stolen by the Nazis during World War II, items that were never returned to their rightful owners." She turned to look at me. Kellan wasn't just stealing information. He was helping this collector identify and acquire specific pieces through forged authentication documents. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. "How many pieces?" "Dozens, maybe hundreds, worth tens of millions of dollars." "And you helped him?" "I provided authentication templates and provenance research. I thought it was legitimate consulting work." Tears started flowing again. By the time I realized what was really happening, I was already too deep to get out. "So you held back information as insurance?" "I kept copies of everything: documents, communications, financial records. I thought if things went wrong, I'd have leverage." "Where are these copies?" "Safety deposit box in our hometown bank." That explained why Felix and his associates were so determined to find us. The evidence Jade had hidden could destroy their entire operation and send dozens of people to prison for decades. "You have to tell Agent Mitchell," I said. "If I do, I'll definitely go to prison. If you don't, we'll all probably end up in a shallow grave somewhere." The federal facility in Nevada turned out to be a compound in the middle of the desert, surrounded by chain-link fences and armed guards. It looked more like a prison than a safe house, which I suppose was the point. We were assigned a small apartment with basic furnishings and no outside communication privileges. Judy was enrolled in online classes again, and Jade continued her debriefings with federal investigators. But something had changed. Agent Mitchell was no longer handling our case, and the new agent seemed less interested in protecting us than in extracting information. On our third day in Nevada, I was called into a conference room where two men in expensive suits were waiting. "Mr. Trevan, I'm Assistant Director Coleman from the FBI's art crime team. This is Agent Voss from Interpol." They wanted to know everything about Jade's work at the museum, her relationship with Kellan, and her knowledge of international art trafficking, but their questions felt different from the previous interviews, more accusatory, less protective. "Your wife has been less than forthcoming about her activities," Coleman said. "We believe she's withholding critical evidence." "What kind of evidence?" "The kind that could help us recover stolen artwork worth hundreds of millions of dollars." Agent Voss leaned forward. "Mr. Trevan, your wife isn't just a victim in this case. She's a co-conspirator who helped facilitate the theft and sale of cultural artifacts. Her cooperation could reduce her sentence, but only if she provides complete disclosure." "What happens if she doesn't?" 25 to life for conspiracy to commit international art theft." That evening, I confronted Jade with what I'd learned. "They know you're hiding evidence," I said, "and they're not going to protect us indefinitely if you don't cooperate." "I'm scared." "Of going to prison?" "Of what Kellan's people will do if I testify against them. They're already trying to hurt us. At least if you cooperate with the FBI, we'll have protection." She was quiet for a long time. "There's something else." "What?" "Kellan wasn't working alone. He had partners inside the museum world, curators, authenticators, dealers, people I've worked with for years. People who know you have evidence against them." "Yes." The next morning, Jade finally told the federal investigators about the safety deposit box. Within hours, agents had recovered boxes of documents that detailed a conspiracy involving dozens of people across multiple countries. The evidence showed that Kellan's organization had been operating for over 5 years, stealing and selling artwork worth more than $200 million. They'd corrupted museum employees, bribed authentication experts, and forged provenance documents for pieces stolen during World War II. "This is the biggest art theft case in FBI history," Coleman told us. "Your wife's evidence will put away everyone involved." "What about our safety?" "Witness protection, new identities, relocation, federal support until the trials are over." "And after the trials?" "You disappear, permanently." 3 months later, I sat in a federal courthouse in New York, listening to my wife testify against the man who'd destroyed our marriage and nearly gotten us all eliminated. Kellan Brooks, whose real name turned out to be Kevin Brock, was facing charges that would keep him in prison for the rest of his life. He looked different in his orange jumpsuit, smaller, older, less dangerous. The confident man who'd seduced my wife and stolen classified information had been replaced by someone who looked tired and defeated. When Jade finished her testimony, Kellan was given a chance to make a statement. "I want to apologize to the Trevan family," he said, looking directly at me. "I manipulated Jade's feelings and put all of you in danger for my own selfish purposes." It was a nice speech, but it felt rehearsed, Like everything else about Kevin Brock, it was probably just another performance. The judge sentenced him to 22 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Felix Roard and 6 other associates received similar sentences. The Swiss collector was extradited to face charges in international court. Dozens of stolen artworks were recovered and returned to their rightful owners or their families. My wife received 5 years of probation in exchange for her cooperation. Our marriage didn't survive the trial, not because of the affair or the federal case or the months in witness protection. It ended because we'd both finally admitted what we'd known for years, that we'd grown into different people who wanted different things from life. The divorce was amicable. Jade moved to Seattle to start over with a new identity and a job with a private authentication firm. Judy chose to live with her mother, which hurt but didn't surprise me. I kept the house and my job at Morrison Manufacturing. Agent Coleman helped arrange for my participation in the federal case to remain classified, so my coworkers never learned the full story of why I'd disappeared for 6 months. These days, my life is quiet again. Predictable, safe. I still get text messages from unknown numbers sometimes, but they're usually just spam or wrong numbers. The real threats are gone, locked away in federal prisons or hiding in countries without extradition treaties. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd fought harder for my marriage, if I'd been more attentive, more romantic, more exciting, if I'd recognized the warning signs before Jade felt the need to look elsewhere for fulfillment. But then I remember that excitement isn't always a good thing. Sometimes boring and predictable are exactly what you need to stay alive. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. How's retirement treating you? I stare at the message for a long moment, then delete it without responding. Some conversations are better left unfinished.